All right, guys, welcome to the Atlas Show, where the best in e-commerce share their strategies and failures and wins so you can fast track your journey on Shopify. Today, we have the pleasure of talking to Adam Griffin, an absolute killer in the e-com and dropshipping space, doing over $1 million a year in dropshipping. So Adam, tell me a little bit first, just share your story. Like, what were you doing prior to e-commerce? How did you really get into the whole scene?
All right. So I feel like a good kind of contextual spirit is my age. I'm 20 years old, so that kind of puts things into perspective. I've been in e-commerce for about 4 years now, just coming up on 4 years. And my story, I feel like it's extremely relatable for a lot of people who don't come from the trenches, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was in the trenches. I was not. I had a super awesome upbringing. I love my parents. They're great. But it was very standard in the fact that when I was 16 years old, I had a super simple job working at a trampoline park, and I was making about $400 every 2 weeks, which was great. But I also had my first car at the time, which was a Mustang, and I love cars. I still love cars, and at the time, I wanted new wheels on this Mustang. The wheels that I wanted were $2,000, and I thought, no way I'm going to be able to afford these. I need to do something else, just a side hustle. So, super simple. I looked up on YouTube how to make money online, and like most of you guys watching, probably just drop shipping, and it kind of went from there. And I had a very unorthodox next couple months. I started out with organic because, like most of you guys, I didn't have any money to run paid ads. And this is by no means realistic, but it did happen to me. One of my first products ever, I posted like 7 or 8 videos, and one of the videos ended up getting 3 million views. And my first ever Shopify website with a yellow background and a handwriting font typography ended up doing about $10,000 in a week. I didn't even know how to fulfill orders. It was kind of scary. I kind of freaked out and deleted the TikTok account because I didn't know if it was legal. I didn't know what to do with this many orders, because keep in mind the AOV was extremely low. It was a $9 product. It was a clone atomizer. I'm sure you guys have seen them. So I had to get quite a few orders to reach that 10K mark, quite a few orders to fulfill. I didn't know how to do it. So I freaked out and kind of slowed down, and I ended up buying the wheels. And then about 2 months later, I was broke again. I spent all the money, and I was like, oh, this is easy. I'm just going to start another store and just make the money back. That is when I realized I got extremely lucky, and I did not make another dollar in e-com for probably about a year and a half. Given 6 months of that year and a half, I did give up in a sense, and that is because around that time I graduated high school. I graduated when I was 17. I was a grade ahead. And I went to university. And in university, I completely lost all focus of everything. I joined a fraternity. I went to parties and stuff. And I'm also not going to sit on here and be like, yeah, I was completely locked out. I was just depressed. That was the best 6 months of my life. That was awesome. I had no money, but I was in a fraternity, had a great time. But then summer rolled around, and I went back home to my mom's house. And the first thing she said when I came home was, all right, cool, it's summer, you need to get a job just so you're not sitting around all day. And that's when I kind of sunk in, like, man, if I would have just stayed focused the past 6 months or so, I could have probably made this work. And so I started applying to jobs. And I got a job interview for a smoothie place that was set the next day at around 10 a.m. So I fell asleep on her couch, and she went to work the next morning. And I woke up around 8:30 a.m., and I was about to get ready for this job interview, and then I was just thinking. I was just laying there on the couch thinking, and I was like, "Am I really about to go to this interview? I'm gonna get the job. It's a smoothie stand. Am I gonna go here, get the job, and work making smoothies for the rest of the summer?" I don't know what it was, but before I knew it, I was laying on that couch until the time had passed for the interview. They tried calling my phone, and I blocked the number. And I was like, I am going to stop at nothing this summer until I make ecom work for the second and final time. Then my mom came home from work later that day, and she was like, how was the interview? And I was like, it was good. It was good. I feel pretty good about it. They'll let me know by Friday. Of course, I didn't get the job. And I actually have a photo library on my phone of just Snapchats I took every night when I went to sleep, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And that whole summer, I pretty much did not sleep until my first store popped off. And around the time my first store popped off, I made my YouTube channel, October of 2023. Now I'm here. That's my story.
No, very cool. Very cool. I think talking to like a lot of entrepreneurs, everybody has like a different upbringing, but there are a lot of similar correlations in like the journey, as in, hey, I started, I failed, I quit, I got a job, I've got parents, I've got to go to college, expectations and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just like the tenacity that you have and like that hunger to be like, okay, like I'm going to stay up all night, all summer, do what no one else is willing to do to make this work. So ultimately, like my question too, and I know there's probably going to be a lot of like beginners watching this too who may not have had their first win. How many products do you think you tested before you hit that first, like had that first, I guess, holy shit moment, where it's like, oh my God, this actually works,
Yeah. So from my first ever product to my first ever product that made me a significant amount of money, not counting that first one, because again, that's just a weird kind of, well, that was weird. That was luck. It took about 7 or 8 products. And
Okay.
I say that, and a lot of people say that's very low. It is very low, and I don't want to discourage people who've done 30, 40. You just have to understand the way that I've always done things is I don't feel comfortable testing anything, spending money on anything until I have more probable reason than not that this will make me money. So I am not one of those people, and I've never been one of those people who will do a product a day, spamming it. I spend a couple weeks just planning out one product. So it was 7 or 8 prolonged over 6 months to a year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think with every dropshipper, some people have more of a, I'll spend a little bit longer testing products, maybe once every couple of weeks, once a week, once a month. And then you have other dropshippers who are like, man, I'm testing like 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah.
I guess ultimately, there's no real right or wrong answer to that. It's just,
Not at all.
what works best for you and whatever system and process you have.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, and we'll jump into product research here in a second, kind of like what you look at when you find a product, like when you, I guess, are looking for a product to sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in the beginning stages with those 7 or 8 products, like what did you do differently, or did you do anything differently with that winner versus the other, 6 or 7 products that you tested? When it comes to like mistakes that beginners might make with their first few products that they're trying to sell.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say between let's say the 8th product was the one that worked and the 7th one, there wasn't like a aha moment, between the 7th and the 8th. There was no night and day difference. It was a gradual improvement. And that's why people end up testing 40 products, because they're making the same mistake on the 2nd that they're making on the 38th. That's an issue. I made sure to improve with every product. I made a list after every product of genuinely what I thought I could do better, put the ego to the side. So the first product on the spectrum, again, disregarding the initial one, was very base level, and it's probably what a lot of people are doing today. I just had a little checklist I got off of YouTube. Does this solve a problem? Can I source it for cheap? Can I find it on PP ads or whatever product research tool? And I thought, yeah, this looks great. It's making, and one of the biggest misconceptions was I looked on these product research tools and I thought I'd hit gold because it would say this product's doing $5 million a month. And I was like, oh my God, I can do $5 million a month. They're doing it. Huge misconception. We can talk about that later. So I would run it and it wouldn't work. And then the next product, I understood, okay, I have no idea why I even sold that last one. My goal for this product is to understand why I think this will work. And then I kind of learned what market research was and how to go into Google Trends, identify if something's actually currently trending. I was beginning to look at the dates on the TikToks that were posted instead of just saying this went viral at one point, more towards this went viral 2 weeks ago. And I tried to sell more relevant products. Again, didn't really work. Next product, I would learn, okay, I need to understand who I'm selling to. I have no idea what these ads even mean or what I want them to accomplish. So now I wanted to make ads with a purpose. So then I would begin to learn consumer psychology, which ultimately, if you want a night and day answer, truthfully, that was it. Me understanding how people worked and how to talk to different profiles, different demographics of people. That third product made me my first $500 or so in revenue. It wasn't profitable and it wasn't the winner, but just by creating a fake customer profile, like, okay, for this product, who is most likely to buy, age range, gender, and even interests. People who do age range and gender, they won't do interests. Like, for example, if you're trying to sell, I don't know, headache relief pills or something, they won't write, my ideal customer might be a football player. And so I tailor a lot of my copy around football players or athletes. And just by trying to connect with people through my copy, whether that's creative or website, I began to see conversions. Given I was spending 500, 500, it was nothing crazy. But in the beginning stages, it's not really even about like how much you're spending compared to how much you purchase, how many purchases you're getting. Just seeing that purchase was like, okay, this is doable. And also, it's important to note that at this point, this was all paid ads. I had money saved up. This was all paid ads. Um, so it was a spectrum of learning and learning and learning and learning until the final product I had. Okay, market research. I understand this is going to do well, more probable than not. I have this entire customer profile. So instead of writing website copy on a Shopify store, I'm going to write a personal, professionally written letter to this specific person who I believe is going to buy, which I still believe is one of the best ways to write copy is come up with a fake person, fake name, and write personally to them. And I combined everything. And I do believe, okay, this product was actually, I mean, you can go look at it. I documented this product. It was Halloween slides, which slides were, end of 2023. Slides were awesome. Christmas slides, shark slides. I do believe there was a bit of timing there. I don't think any product is going to work without just, and I hate saying this because I don't like telling people that it's not up to them to make this work. There was a bit of timing. You do need a bit of timing. It was perfectly timed with Halloween. It was a Halloween product. It was seasonal, so it didn't last long. But just that timing combined with the lessons that I learned product to product, I think ultimately made it work. It wasn't a night and day,
Hmm. I mean, timing is ultimately everything, but if you do something enough, you're eventually going to get that timing right as well, No, very, very, very interesting. When it comes to, I know you mentioned copy and really understanding your ICP or like ideal customer profile, which is honestly one of the, I think, most overlooked things as a beginner is you find a product and you're like, wow, like I would buy this, and like that's the whole reason you start selling it, when that's almost like the wrong approach. It's like you need to find a product obviously where the timing is right, where it's trending, and at the same time like really understand who's going to buy that product, because ultimately it's just a matter of like getting someone to, like, the best way to sell, and I've always said this, is like selling without selling and making it feel like it was their idea in the first place, by like relating to them when it comes to the copy that you write and the benefits. Like, people don't care about the product itself. They care about what they're going to get out of the product and that like end result. So like, how can you best relay that to that customer? And that ultimately comes from understanding the exact ICP and demographic. So very, very cool that you said that. Now, when it comes to copy, obviously there's this kind of conversation up in the e-commerce space, but do you think nowadays copy matters more, or is it the visual aspects of your store? So like the videos, the creatives, the GIFs. If you had to pick one, which one would you think is more important?
Now, when you say copy, do you mean just website copy or creative copy and website copy? Because you said videos and creatives.
I guess let's separate both of them. Let's say like website copy, and then like something someone would actually read. And then when it comes to like videos and creatives and GIFs, right? Like that's something they'd more hear than anything and visually see. What would you say is most important?
I think that if you would not have included creatives into that list, you just said visuals and GIFs, I would say website copy. Nobody's going to get to your website if your creative is not good. That is your top of funnel. If that is not visually appealing, if that does not look good, your copy doesn't matter. There's nobody on the store. That's why whenever somebody will send me metrics and they'll have a $3 cost per click and a 2% click-through rate on Meta, and they'll be like, is my offer bad? Like, dude, nobody's even seeing your offer. So I think I'm going to go with the visual aspect.
Okay. No, I definitely agree. I think especially, I don't know, there used to be a time where copy, like direct response copywriting, was even more important than like the visual elements. But I feel like now in this generation, especially with everybody scrolling on TikTok and TikTok brain, it's like, having viral creatives and visual elements are like a huge part of success. Now, when it comes to video creatives, let's talk ad creatives, because obviously that's like, you can have the coolest product in a good store, but ultimately if no one comes to your store, you're not going to make any money. Correct. So when it comes to ad creatives, what do you look for when you're building ad creatives? Are you more focused on the videos over like photo ads? I assume videos, they do perform slightly better. And then like, I guess, how do you script out a good video? How do you make a good video ad?
So, like I said, I've been in the supplement space since January. The issue with private label supplements, which is what I do, a lot of Supplefull, there are no existing video ads for your initial testing unless you want to spend quite a bit on UGC, which I personally heavily believe in static ads. So I'm doing a lot of static ads right now, but there was a time when it was mainly video ads, and I do have a structure for that. What I look for specifically is variation. So I have a very specific setup when it comes to video ads, and I did a lot of video ads on TikTok, so that's kind of what I'm referring to. I think an issue that a lot of people have is they will have, and they'll test as many videos as they usually test. I did 5 on TikTok. I did 5 videos initially. And what they would do is they would find 5 nice TikToks or 5 cool pieces of UGC content to rip or whatever, and they will make 5 videos of roughly the same length. They might have different hooks, they might have different music, but honestly, they're all the same exact video. They have no variation. So what I understood with testing was I want to test as many different video lengths as possible, as many different audiences as possible, as many different styles as possible, so I can try to figure out who the customer or which one the customer kind of responds to the best and then go heavy on that one. So I would always do 5 videos. I would do one below 10 seconds. And also, rewind real quick. You mentioned earlier that way of selling, that indirect selling, illusion of choice. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in door-to-door sales. That's how I sold in door-to-door sales. I hated talking to people. So I would just be like, if you want, you can do it. And I love moving that spectrum on video ads too. So I will have 5 ads, like I was saying. The first will be below 10 seconds, 10 seconds or below, and it would be the most organic, the most natural video you could ever imagine. 1 line of text, no benefits, just a very well-written hook. And people call me crazy for this, but I'm convinced that me doing this and a lot of creatives have been the only reason that I've been able to get to where I'm at, is doing things differently. These shorter ads would have no call to action. Nothing to let you know that it is an ad, just a very, very enticing, curiosity-building hook. People know at the end of a TikTok ad, it fades out and says shop now. They know to click. So I would have one ad that is very, very short, very nice hook, a very cool visual depending on the product, no call to action. Then next step up, I would have 2 video ads in between 10 and 20 seconds. This would be like a mid-style. They can have a couple benefits, they have a hook, they have a call to action. But the verbiage that you want to use in your copy is not going to be like, this is why you need our product. This will do this for you. Buy this now. It's still just talking about the person in the video, like, I bought this and I feel this way, trying to invoke jealousy. So indirect selling, like you were saying. And most of the time, these perform the best. That's why there's 2 of them. And then on top of that, on top of those 2, I would have 2 very long videos, which usually don't do good on TikTok, as TikTok brand, but yet it's still good to have that variation. I'd have 2 videos above 30 seconds, and this is full on salesman, full on like, hey, this is our brand, we're selling this, it does this, you need to buy this, here's the offer. Just full on salesy. That's the spectrum I like to test, and then whichever one worked, I would make more ads like that. That's what I look for in a creative for the most part.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. It's interesting talking to, a lot of marketers, because everybody kind of has like a different sampling approach or testing approach.
There's no right answer.
Identify. Exactly. You kind of have to figure out what works for you, and most importantly, what works with most effectively with your ICP. Like even from when we were talking about copy, like I know people whose ICP is a much older ICP, and rather than using traditional, I guess in our age, like traditional Shopify viral video ad on Facebook or Instagram, they use like listicles. Like they sell through these articles that are just all pretty much copy, targeting a demographic that used to really, yeah.
My ICP is 55 plus only, and it's only static ads, stuff like that. They're responding very well.
And then, so coming back to that, I feel like a lot of dropshippers will they eventually hit that early phase where they're testing all different types of stuff. Then they figure out what works. And in your case, it's like supplements and a target, like an older demographic. When you kind of figure that out, do you feel more comfortable continually targeting that same ICP now that you really understand them, know how to sell to them? Or do you like mixing it up and maybe testing out a different niche or doing that from time to time?
I've never felt uncomfortable selling in different age groups, but I will say I cannot remember the last time I've specifically sold to men. I feel extremely comfortable selling to women, and I haven't strayed from that in over a year.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that ultimately comes to like you just built a good process around how you sell to women in that older demographic, and it's kind of rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm.
I guess segueing into processes, obviously AI is kind of the whole new meta over the last couple of years. How do you, I guess, first of all, how do you see AI playing a part in e-commerce and dropshipping, especially for, beginners and people who are just getting into the space? And then, yeah, ultimately, how are you using AI to really improve and enhance your process, speed, efficiency, and make more money?
Yeah. So if you go back in my channel, like a year or so, that is around the time when AI tools started popping up. Not like product research tools, those have been around forever, but I'm talking about like product photo generation, pre-built store stuff. People were starting to use ChadGBT for copy, and I was against all of it. In the videos, I'd be like, please do not do this. And I still think I was right, because the product photos still, I'm a perfectionist. It has to look perfect. There cannot be one word messed up. It just wasn't there a year ago. AI product photos weren't there a year ago. They weren't good, but it was so fascinating and new that people were still doing it. I was on YouTube like, please don't do this. And this is one opinion I still hold true to this day, is I do not think that you should write all of your copy with ChatGPT. I do not think people understand the importance of copywriting because it's boring. I think the ability to write to your ICP still separates people, the people who are making money and the people who are not. I do not think you should ever have your entire website done in ChatGPT. I think it's impossible for a robot to emotionally connect to a human like that. And I think, why not, use your creative own brain and do that. The only reason I'm at where I'm at is because I'm very creative. I do things in a bit of an unorthodox manner, and I think that has served me very well. But although I am brutally honest, I'm not a liar. ChatGPT has been insane. I've used it for everything. I've used ChatGPT for everything. I have a library of over 1,000 images on ChatGPT. I believe that if you are not attempting to recreate product photos with ChatGPT right now, I don't know what you're doing. And if you're in private label supplements like me, and you are not tailoring because you in Suppleful, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Suppleful, you can design the label. It gives you a template. You design the label. They print it on demand for you. If you are not tailoring that label around easiness of generation when it comes to ChatGPT, like purposefully not putting graphics on it that will be difficult to generate, you're doing it incorrectly. I make this clear on my YouTube. I have a very specific way of making labels so that almost all the time GPT will get it right all the time. And that has made things very easy for me. Probably the last, every single store since Blanks, my biker brand, because that's highly UGC based. We have over 70 affiliates. We just pull pictures from them. We don't need GPT for that. But every single brand since then, there has not been one real photo on the website at all. Even if there's a good AliExpress image or a good competitor image, I believe I can make it better. My only pick with GPT was, again, I'm a perfectionist. Most people might not care about this, but every GPT image kind of has this like grain to it to make it like slightly low quality. That was my pick, but then I just process every GPT image through an upscaler and it looks beautiful. So I will do that, yes. And the last thing that I mentioned was AI Storebuilders. I was very against those, very publicly against those because they were bad. Like they were bad. They were not good. I never used a good one. And I know we're on the Atlas podcast right now. And I know I'm affiliated with Atlas, but genuinely, even if I wasn't, it impressed me. That was the turning point for me with, okay, maybe AI stores could be good. Now, I still do not think you should use Atlas and stick with the copy that it generates for you. I think it is very good for inspiration, but still, I can't think of a future where I would not say this. And if there ever comes a future where this is not true, I'm a little bit scared. But I still think no matter how good the copywriting is, it cannot connect with human emotion as good as you can, because you are a human. You are your own GPT when it comes to writing copy for your ICP. But the Atlas copy is good, and it can be great for inspiration. If you watch my videos, all that I do to kind of angle my copy towards an ICP, I don't even delete the Atlas copy. I just change the wording. And people don't understand that. They hear me say, you need to talk to your customer like they're in the room with you. They don't understand what that means. Like, do I need to delete everything and rewrite it, or do I need to let AI do it? Not really. All you need to do is change a lot of your tenses to you and your. So for example, in your copy, AI will generate something like, um, this cream or this cream provides results for people all across the globe. All you need to do, you can keep that sentence. All you need to do is change it to, this cream will provide, I can't speak right now, will provide the results that you were looking for, or you or your. This words like that are very, very important to talking to people. So if you watch the video, all that I do, I don't know if it made any sense. I tried to contextualize it the best I could, but in a lot of my videos, I will make the Atlas website, and I would not delete the copy, but I would just change words to change the tone of the text to exactly who I'm trying to sell to. Because although Atlas is fantastic, maybe you guys can add a feature like this in the future, like input your ICP here, and we'll tailor it towards that. But for right now, just do that manually. But besides that, I think AI is great. I use it for almost everything.
No. Very, very, very insightful. Yeah, I totally agree with you. At least AI is great at a lot of things, but copy and that human tone, and I mean, there's so many different aspects to like direct response copywriting, and especially if you're a beginner watching this, like there is a lot involved when it comes to direct response copywriting and how you write and the tonality that you use, and all of that varies depending on the type of audience that you're targeting. I think at least where AI is right now, every single model, we're not at a point yet where it can do that exactly like what you said. I think for me, I'm just doing a lot of marketing. I spend a lot of time using AI mostly to spark like an outline,
Yeah.
like I'll have it study the audience. I use a lot of deep research as well to study the ICP, and then I'll have it list out points. And then it's my job to, again, just kind of make those minor adjustments. And that's all we really try to do at Atlas, even with our copy, is try to be like, okay, here are the best points that you should focus on. And then how can, obviously everything needs a human touch. And then how can you tweak and adjust these things based on your knowledge and how to communicate to that ICP? I think that's important. And then again, yeah, I think even, a year ago, it's like every store builder, I used to see these, buy a pre-built store or use our store builder stuff.
Yes.
And it was the worst stuff I've ever seen. And I think Sebastian and I both having a dropshipping background and also being a perfectionist too, it's like I would spend so much time trying to pick the perfect theme for my product and all this stuff. And I think we both kind of took a look at it and we were like, there's like Atlas could build something so much better, and so much more useful, at least from design and aspect, and something visually appealing and more brandable in a sense. And that's really kind of what we went after. I think now, especially with you talking about copy, that's been a huge thing for us now, is like, how can we build a better model? And we've played around with, insert your ICP here. And even then, man, it's still just like, it's not perfect,
I don't know if it'll ever replace it.
Yeah, I think I think it'll just take a little bit longer than we all kind of expected for AI to get there. But yeah, so we talked about creatives and store building and AI. I think ultimately you're a Facebook ad guy and a media buyer. I think we kind of dabble into to that side of things here. Obviously, I would say 90% of all dropshippers and people on e-commerce are trying to master Facebook ads. I think TikTok ads, mostly just media buying in general. There's very few, from my perspective, that are doing like just organic stuff, and it's kind of hit or miss here and there. So kind of give me a rundown on your media buying strategy. We can start with Facebook. I don't know if you do TikTok. I know you do Facebook, though.
Not much anymore, no.
Yeah, so let's talk, what's kind of your go-to ad strategy when it comes to Facebook?
So I just recently implemented a couple new tips from a friend of mine because I'm always trying to learn, and I think this is super insightful, and it's worked very well for me so far. Very interesting. I'll share it. Basically, for Meta, and as I said, I'm only really into private label supplements right now, so it's only static ads. I really don't run video ads. It's just statics. But I've learned a couple things from doing this for over 6 months now, like really going heavy on Facebook media buying. One thing is cash flow wins all the time, especially from this recent brand. I really didn't want to give it up. And the first couple of days weren't great with the test. I got a couple conversions, but it wasn't what I was used to with TikTok, quick sales, stuff like that. TikTok is very quick. Before I share the strategy, I want to share that people need to lower their expectations when it comes to day one, day two, especially with YouTube. And I'm a bit hypocritical because I posted videos like this of like, look at my insane results, day two, day three. Genuinely, if you had infinite cash flow, you can make every single product work. Meta irons itself out. Its algorithm is smarter than any of us know. And the only way I was able to make this recent product work is just by sheer brute force. You talk to any of the guys much bigger than me, they'll mention the word brute force. You'll hear it on Twitter. It's real. If you have that cash flow, and you can spend, you can set a campaign, $150 CBO, whatever, with the right creatives, and you don't even look at it. You just let it spend. I promise you, it will iron itself out. So I have people right now. I also have a coaching agency. I have people messaging me every single day, metric screenshots saying like, I need to cut this off. This is so cooked. And it spent like $9. And you just need to let it spend out. So a little bit off topic, but for those who are trying to do meta, please just let it spend out. A lot of people will say, no way I'm doing $150 CBO. I'm only going to do a $30 ABO. Then they'll run a $30 product 7 times, 7 different products. And it's like ends up more money than the $150 original CBO. And that first product probably would have worked out better. But besides that, initially, what I've recently started doing is individual hook tests, which I think are awesome, specifically for static ads. Because with static ads, it's all about the hook. You don't have much visual space. It's not a moving picture. It's just a picture. So obviously you have to have a nice visual, but that hook at the top is going to be extremely important. And you can just initially go into a testing phase with actual static ads. I know some people like to test a bunch. Some people don't. I'm kind of in the middle. I start with 10 ads, and I'm not going to go over again kind of the spectrum, but it's that same spectrum for TikTok ads. I'll do a lot of information. I'll do very little information. And the very little information, people correlate that with like not very product aware ads, or they don't even know what you're selling. Not really. Just using 3 or 4 words, but the right words to invoke curiosity to let them click. So I'll have a spectrum of little information, a lot of information, different audiences, different angles for each one, different ICPs sometimes for each ad, 10 of them. Then I'll let them run at a $30 budget ABO for 1 day. I look for conversions day 1. And usually 1 to 2 ads will convert very well. The rest do not. I feel like that's pretty typical. More likely than not, a lot of your ads are not going to perform. And because each ad is specific in how much information it has and the ICP that it's targeting, that gives me information. Okay, this ICP interacted the best, or this amount of information struck the customer the best. And then I will pretty much just spam iterations of that specific style. So this specific angle with this specific amount of information. And I'll even try to see if the hook was the culprit. If I used a special word or phrase in the hook, which is the case for my current product without leaking it, I use a very specific word that is, I believe, responsible for all the performance. And now I only upload ads with that word in it, and they all perform. But I will graduate these kind of winning iterations into a simple CBO, and I'll just scale by percentage based on consistency. So a lot of people will increase the budget. They'll double the budget 100% after 1 day, and then their metrics will tank. That's pretty common. I don't do that. That tends to be because you have a very, very good day and you get excited and you up the budget and the next day is bad. I like to see consistency. So every couple of days, I'll incrementally up the budget. I'm very slow with it. And I think that's okay. It builds consistency. So that's the way that I do that. I was gonna say something. I completely forgot what it was. I had the thought, but I wanted to finish this thought first. Oh yeah. I have found personally that static ads with very little information typically do the best. They have for me. And I uploaded one video once saying making ads for this brand. And a lot of the ads just had 3 or 4 words on them. And I got a comment saying like, no way this sells. This looks like a high school PowerPoint presentation. I thought it was beautiful personally, but he was like, no way this little amount of copy sells. And it does, because I think a lot of people make the same mistake, whether it's video ads or static ads. And I say this a lot, and I need to say it more, because seriously, this is a mistake a lot of people make. People don't understand that by giving the customer too much information in the creative, you are allowing them to make a decision before they can even click on your website. So by putting all of the benefits you list on your website, and God forbid, sometimes their offer at the bottom, like 30% off buy now, or even the price, and they wonder why their CPC is high. The customer doesn't even have to click on your website to make a decision. So I have found the ads that perform the best for me to be graduated into these CBOs are ads that tell the customer what you're selling, hit them with the desired result, but not tell them anymore. We're not going to tell you the price, not going to tell you any more benefits. Just, and I want to share what I'm doing without leaking too much, but the style that's worked the best for me is this. Yeah, okay, I can say this. So all the supplements on Suppleful pretty much are natural. They're organic. They have very organic ingredients, which is really cool, and that's a benefit within itself. But what I like to do is this. I like to let's think of an example here. I'll just use an old product that somebody new was selling. A focus formula. It was a focus formula, right? And they generated this beautiful image of the capsule, whatever, cracking open. They'll put it smack in the center. And what I found is a very, very good style for people to use is saying, we made natural, and then a drug, like a heavy drug that you can compare to this thing, and just censor a couple words out. Censor it so that Meta doesn't take it down, and also it adds some shock factor. So the focus formula, saying we made natural Adderall, or we made organic Adderall, and censoring it, and then at the bottom, where the call to action would usually go, to saying like, you're welcome, or try brand name, gives you little to no information except for what we made, and it has some shock factor to it. That is the exact ad that I'm running right now, different iterations of that, is performing extremely well without saying too much. But people need to understand that if you put the entire website in your ad, video or static, they have no reason to click. So a little bit off topic, but I did share the strategy and then piece of advice. Yeah.
No, I think that's like honestly extremely, extremely valuable. It took me a long time to kind of realize that, especially when I first started off in like marketing and selling and e-commerce. It was like, okay, I need to like shove as much, sales points as possible and value down these people's throats, about my product, what it can do. But then you realize like the best thing you can do is leave somebody curious to kind of take the next step. Because like purchasing any product or buying anything is a journey. And so you can't just cram that entire journey in one step or one ad. It's like leaving them curious and like almost kind of coming up with their own ideas and notions of what your product might do, then going to the website. It's like even with copy, it's like get them to read line 1 and line 1 should get them to read line 2 and so forth, So you kind of just get them hooked. You give them a little taste of something and that outcome and that end result. And then they are like kind of putting together, okay, so like, what does that mean? How does this actually work? And then they click your website, they view more info. And then that kind of goes into like retargeting too, which is my next question with ads is obviously the messaging you use to target like a cold audience and someone who doesn't know you is different from somebody who may already be familiar with you. When you run retargeting, do you adjust the copy, angle, sales messaging a little bit versus some of your creatives maybe that are more towards, a cold demographic? Like, what's the retargeting look like from your end?
So to be honest with you, I don't adjust anything most of the time. I kind of leave it the exact same. I'm not sure if that's the most efficient, but that is what I do, and it does work. And I will see that a lot of the time for other brands that retarget me on social media. I'll see the same ad, 20 times. And while I'm a pretty tough customer, each time I see the ad, it will make me think more and more and more. So I'm not the best guy to talk about it, like specific retargeting creatives.
Okay. No, just curious. I mean, everybody kind of does something a little different. And even with the ad strategy stuff too, it's like, I've talked to so many people with different kind of methods and ads. And obviously you're doing like ABOs first to kind of test creatives. Then you build one CBO campaign. I assume you're doing like no interest targeting and stuff too, right?
I love Advantage Plus.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's kind of the new meta is like, don't target at all. Let Facebook do its thing.
Yes.
Speaking of ads, something that I've realized just talking to some other guys who run ads is cost caps have seemed to be working extremely well recently,
Really?
Especially for people with, so actually I've been testing this over the last couple of weeks. But basically setting a cost cap even when testing creatives. And basically you scale based on your cost cap. So let's say, for example, like I need purchases for less than $30. Mm-hmm. I can start running ads. And I noticed this originally started with like 10 creatives and it wasn't spending any money. And so I was like, okay, like kind of took a step back and I was like, honestly, we could bump the cost cap up to $35. And then it started spending a little bit, but it wouldn't max out my budget. What I realized is I needed to change and update the creatives because they weren't good enough. And then once I started changing the creatives, it started just spending as much as it possibly could. I mean, I would wake up in the morning, like halfway through the day, and my budget's already been hit. and it spends within that cost cap. So it was a really interesting way of, I guess, testing. Maybe, I don't know. You're the expert here, so I don't want to give you advice, but it is interesting in a sense of if you, without wasting and burning a bunch of money testing creatives, like Facebook won't even deliver your ad if it doesn't think it can get within your cost cap based on how your creative is performing, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, if you're not maxing out your budget using cost caps, then you need to improve your creatives and so forth. So I think it is interesting. I think the one thing, though, that a lot of beginners mess up on is they listen to way too many people, and then they take in all this information, and then they wonder why it's not working. I think one of the most valuable things is just learning from one person, trying that method. Obviously, what you're doing works. So anybody watching this, if they just want to go to your YouTube channel and just follow exactly what you're doing step by step. And then later on, everybody kind of has a different way of improving or trying something new or sampling things and testing. And ultimately, that's what marketing is just testing and improving and making minor adjustments to get better results. So I know I don't want to keep you here too long, but one thing, a couple questions just to wrap things up here is really, what is your biggest L and biggest learning lesson that you've taken away from dropshipping in your e-commerce journey? I think everybody's got one of those. Yeah, your biggest loss or your biggest kind of learning experience.
Let me think. Well, I haven't had any stores. I've heard horror stories like stores that go negative like thousands. Never had that happen. Let me think. Biggest L. I'd say... Oh, no, we did lose a lot of... Yeah, okay, I know. Okay, yeah. So it was with Blanks, the print-on-demand dropshipping clothing brand supplied through Printify. I was very unfamiliar with print-on-demand at the time. I knew how it worked. I knew that you selected the clothing item you wanted, then you selected the supplier. I just assumed all the suppliers, they all said 5 stars, they were all good. So I selected the one with the fastest shipping time, the cheapest price in the US. Printify is great because they source out of the US for a lot of the items, so very quick shipping. And then we had our first drop, the most hyped up drop ever. We had all of our affiliates posting. We use Klaviyo for SMS lists, so our site is locked, and they submit their number and then blast a text when it opens, and they all head on the site. And it went fantastic. We got hundreds of orders first drop. It was awesome. And I fulfilled them as one would. And the second the delivery time started hitting, we started getting email after email after email. Apparently, the supplier that I chose had a horrible print, and we were getting sent pictures of the clothing and whatnot. And it was true. The print was very, very cracked, because it was a black hoodie with big white text on the back. Lots of room for cracking through the middle, It was just horrible quality. Then I ordered one to myself to see, and pretty much every quality you wouldn't want in a hoodie, it had. It was super light. You wash it once, and it got the lint balls all over it, and the stuff was cracking. And I believe in customer experience over everything else, so I did end up refunding pretty much everybody. Not we didn't get emails from everybody, but everybody we did get emails from refunded, and that was a pretty big loss. I don't know if it was a big enough loss to completely put us in the red for that drop, but we lost thousands from that. So that kind of highlights the importance of suppliers. After that, we sent a sample order of every single available supplier to my business partner's house in Dallas and just compare and contrast to them. And we found the perfect one eventually. That's probably the biggest sell.
So suppliers.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, even with my dropshipping journey, that was probably one of the biggest issues was suppliers, logistics, scaling, shipping times, quality of product. So it's something that I think everybody goes through. Everybody will learn that lesson the hard way. But it is kind of a later step in the process. The first one's just okay, how do I start making money? How do I start seeing results in sales? So
they're not ready for the headache that comes after they start making the money.
But that's with any business, it always seems, you're like, okay, this is all it takes. And then you realize it's not all it takes. And there's a lot more to this game. Exactly. Nah, man. Well, hey, first of all, I really appreciate your advice and you taking the time to jump on here. Any final words for, anybody stepping into the dropshipping space who look up to you and, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Adam Griffin, on Instagram at Adam Griffin, and at TikTok I'm not going to tell you the username though. You got to guess. But final. I got two final words, but I got to pick. I got to pick one. All right, I got one. It has to do with, I think, the most important topic that we covered, which was identifying your ICP and writing copy that pushes a specific group of people to purchase. I think that is the one thing that people are not doing they need to be doing. Everybody's focused on the pretty website and the cool creatives and how much revenue your competitor's done. Nobody's worried about the copy. Start focusing on copy. And the one piece of advice I will leave you with is try to sell to everybody, and you will end up selling to nobody.
Very wise.
Was that good?
Very wise.
I think that was pretty good.
That was pretty solid.
Thanks.
So, no, I appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you very much.
All right, man. Well, thank you for having me.